it's good to talk with you. We got the chance to speak a year ago before you fought Rob Font. That was obviously supposed to be Umar Nurmagomedov. He got hurt, but you had the fight in front of you again now. So how did this rebooking kind of come about?
Yeah, I mean, they just asked me to fight him. They still kind of wanted me and Umar doing a number one contender fight. So they asked for it. I kind of was like, hey, I think that Umar should like get a win beforehand or at least have a fight. I feel like that would be a fair thing to ask. He went out, he did it. So yeah, number one contender fight against Umar now.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So, obviously you sounded optimistic that the title shot was for next for you at that time, and now you're saying it's again the same situation here. I mean, would you be taking this fight if that wasn't the carrot on the stick here?
Maybe I would, like I don't really know, honestly. I don't really kind of see the sport in maybe the same way that a lot of the other people do, in the sense of like the rankings meaning a ton. When I got into the UFC, they didn't have rankings. So, the way that I kind of am viewing this fight is it's another tough guy that uh, gets the chance to try to beat me, and I get the chance to try to beat him. And may the better man win, and may the better man get the title shot. That's the way that I see it.
Sure, sure. And obviously that go back to that Rob Font fight here. It wasn't necessarily a crowd pleaser. You weren't particularly impressed with your performance, if I understand right. I think you apologized for it. Am I right on that or?
Yeah, more or less. But I mean, I was kind of I was apologetic in the way that, like, hey, I know that you guys expected more and wanted more. At the same time, man, I had to give myself a lot of grace because this sport is insane. Like, it's wild and really crazy injuries happen while you're in there. And I had one happen in the first couple of minutes that was really significant and like really rare too, which is weird. But I mean, looking back, it's like that's how you pivot, like what was I gonna do? Fight one of the best boxers in the division with just a one arm, and then have to worry about it getting kicked and all of that stuff. So I wish that that would be a little bit. I mean, you did acknowledge it, but I wish it would be a little bit more acknowledged in the narrative around that fight. Is I'm not a boring fighter. Not once have I had a boring fight outside of the fact that I had to do it with one arm. So uh, you know, that's how it went.
I know, and obviously, you know how it is sometimes with people. It's what have you done for me lately, especially in this sport, right?
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
I mean, that gets frustrating, but again, we know you as an exciting fighter. You've been in some very fantastic fights with some amazing knockouts and finishes and things like that. So I'm sure a lot of people will be able to remember that when fight time comes around for this one. But going back again to that performance, I just wanted to ask you, like, did you think that performance, I mean, coupled with the injury, the triceps injury, correct? You fully tore your triceps?
Yep, from a tricep,
Yeah.
yep.
Those two things combined, is that why there was the wait for the title opportunity here?
Yeah, I think part of it's that. Yeah, part of it's that. Part of it I think is the whole Sean wanting to fight Cheeto thing. Which after watching the fight, even going into the fight, was it is what it is. Obviously, it was a giant mismatch. So yeah, but I think a decent amount of it was just Sean wanting to get that one back.
Now you did show in that Rob fight that obviously there was an extra dimension to your game that we had not seen. Obviously, that's the positive takeaway here is we got to see your takedown game and all that. But with the injury, I mean, do you expect that you could have been able to show more dynamism in your grappling phase of the fight?
Oh, absolutely. Like man, if I would have had two arms in that fight, that it would have been, it would have been stopped for sure. No offense to Rob Font, but because I really like Rob. I think that he's a good guy, but man, like if I have two arms in that fight, I won with one, and I won every round and barely got hit. If I had two arms, it would have been, yeah, not the same.
And again, you're talking about going forward again here, back to this fight, this Umar fight coming up. You are saying that the top contender offer has been re-extended, right? That's still part of this play for both of you?
Yeah, I believe Dana, when he announced it, he did say that. He said this number one contender fight, Umar versus Corey. So, yeah, I mean, Dana said it himself on Instagram. So, yep, we're going with that.
And obviously, because Sean is fighting Merab Dvalishvili later this year in September, I believe is where we have. I don't know that the calendar's lining up for you to get a second fight in. If that's the case, if you know everybody takes care of their business, I mean, is that something you're happy to wait for? Maybe like early in the next year, or
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, definitely. I'll wait for my title shot. Those guys are gonna have a good fight, and afterwards I'll fight the winner.
I want to ask you too about the triceps injury. So you had two surgeries, if I understand correct?
Sure, yeah, yeah, you guys do your jobs real good. Yeah. I got a I got a tricep surgery, and then 8 weeks later when I was allowed to, I got a scope on the elbow because what caused the tricep injury was just a bunch of floating bones pretty much causing bursitis, and then that bursitis got really infected a couple weeks before the fight, and then I had to be on antibiotics, and then antibiotics, I suppose, they kind of like ruin your body, and I had to be on all of those to get rid of the infection, and then I just went out and hurt it right away. That's kind of why it happened. But I got the bones taken out, I think 2 months later, just to make sure that I don't get any more bursitis because that was a pain in the ass to deal with too.
Oh, sure, sure. So when was the initial surgery? You said the second one was 8 weeks later, but when was the first one?
It was like right after the fight. I think I got it that week. Literally, the day after the fight, I went and got an MRI when I got home, and then I think I was booked like maybe 3 or 4 days later because you can't do that surgery way after. You got to get it done like immediately if it's gonna work.
Sure. Now, again, you had the two surgeries. What's the recovery like from that second one? When are you like back to normal?
Yeah, I was about 3 months till being able to use it, like without having to stare at it, without like being super worried about it hurting. So it was about 3 months after the first initial surgery, and then about I think about like maybe 4.5, 5 months is when it started feeling good enough to where I didn't have to baby it anymore. And then around 6.5 months when it was like I didn't even think about it anymore. And yeah, I mean it feels great. I did a really great job rehabbing it. I stayed healthy the whole time. I think that a big piece of healing your injuries is not being a fat, lazy slob while you're hurt. So yeah, I was real healthy the whole time, and I healed it up pretty good.
So what do you do with that time? Obviously, because you're used to being a very active guy, and of course you're a real student of the game as well. So like you love to sharpen your tools, you love to add to that toolbox. When you can't do those things the way you'd like to, I mean, what do you do? Like how do you handle that?
Well, I did a lot of kicking. I did a lot of left-handed stuff. I did a lot of footwork stuff. I Yeah, I kind of just did everything that I could do without one arm. And then when I was able to start grappling, I just made sure that I didn't choose spazzy partners, and I just went with people that I trusted, and then kind of eased into that. And, you do the sport long enough, man, you get really good at knowing how to ease back in from injuries and how to navigate them and make it so that they're not really that big of a deal. Um, so yeah, I mean, just a lot of working on everything else other than the right hand.
But this was a bigger injury for you. I mean, you've had injuries, of course, everybody does, but this is certainly one of the most visible ones I think that we've seen, right?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, this is the worst injury I've gotten, but it wasn't my knee. So thank God for that. That would be the
Of,
worst.
of course, of course. I got the sense that you were hoping to return maybe a little sooner than this August date here. When would you have liked to have come back if it was all, entirely in your control?
I suppose June or July would have been great, but yeah, it's okay. It's real close to the title shot, so I would have had to wait anyway. So it's all good.
Was the idea of waiting this long because they wanted to get it in Abu Dhabi and have kind of on ABC and all that stuff?
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, they want me and Umar fighting on a big card, and yeah, I mean, I'm a headliner now. This is my six-man event, so yeah, they wanted to wait for me and a guy from out here to fight each other.
Do you like that idea that you're like I'm a headliner now? Like it seems like you're very comfortable with it, and I mean, there's a lot of pressure in there, but obviously you've gotten used to that. Is that something you enjoy?
Yeah, I definitely enjoy it, man. Like you when you're coming up through the circuit of being an amateur and then being a professional and all of that stuff. I mean, you really look forward to these days. You dream about them. You dream about winning the world title, but like I want big fights. I want them to be against best guys in the world in the coolest parts of the world that don't have state taxes. And and that's what I want to do. So uh yeah, I mean, it's great. Like when I sit back and reflect, it's awesome because I think I'm only about halfway through my UFC career. I got another probably 6 more years in me, and I'm already headlining 6 shows. So the sky's the limit for me.
Now, you mentioned this before, but Umar took that fight, in between the time against Bezkat Almakian, relatively unheralded opponent, not necessarily an untalented one, but one that kind of came out of nowhere, right? It was not one of those elite names that we're always talking about, especially when it comes to your fights and that kind of thing, right? So, how much do you view your experience in this matchup as an advantage?
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be a huge advantage. Maybe not the most giant because some people are knuckleheads, and you could tell Umar's not a knucklehead. He's you could tell he's got his shoulder on straight, and you could tell. I mean, he definitely comes from a really good camp, so he's definitely getting good advice, and he just doesn't seem like the guy to me that's gonna let too much of that stuff get in the way. But at the same time, experience matters. I have felt more things in that cage than he has felt, and I know how to deal with them. Like I think that a lot of this fight is going to be who can deal with adversity better, and I've proven time and time again that I'm really good at that, and that's going to definitely be in my advantage.
You said this even last year when we spoke. The rankings weren't all that important to you when it came to the Umar fight and all that. But what is it about Umar in particular that makes him an interesting opponent for you?
Yeah, I think his style is really what interests me the most. Him being that well rounded is really like was fun to try to figure out. Very challenging, but very fun to try to figure out. I think him coming from a really good team, and then him also just being one of these mythological monsters that the Dagestani guys are kind of getting turned into is really awesome. I want to see how I stack up against that. Like I said, man, a big purpose for me to do this is to see how great I am, and I want to see how great I am compared to a guy that has a really unique, good style of striking, but also comes from one of the best grappling camps that you can maybe come out of in it. And I want to see how great I am against that.
There really are. I mean, there's a few Nurmagomedovs. There's a few members of that family who've gone on to MMA success, and very few people have defeated one of them. I mean, is that nice to kind of be able to say, if you take care of business here, it's like I'll have that name on my ledger here on my resume and be able to point that out, and then people will be like, "Yo, look at that."
Yeah, that's a big deal. A lot of this sport is also being like, who have you fought and who have you beaten? And like I said, man, I want to really see how I stack up against that style of fighter. I really, really want to see that. I want to know what it feels like to go against someone that's supposed to be that good, and like in the grappling department and in the striking department. So that's what excites me, man. Like I'm super pumped for that, man. I'm really, really excited to go toe for toe in every area of the fight against him, and I can't wait.
And and you don't want to look past Umar. I know you've got to take care of business first. You do still have that eye on the title. There is that fight between Sean and Merab as well first. But especially, I think a lot of people look at your style. They look at O'Malley's style and they say, you know what, this would be a very intriguing fight because you're two very talented strikers. Title aside, is you and O'Malley one of the more interesting opponents for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like O'Malley's beating everyone with striking, and I'm the guy that can do that with him. There's really no one else in the division that I feel like can strike that well with him. Jan did a great job, but Jan stylistically is not like he was a little bit at a disadvantage just because stylistically Sean has a little bit of a better build for a striker. But yeah, I mean, man, that's the fight that everyone's been asking for a really long time. It's one that I'm super fascinated in. I think that both of what we do great is going to be highlighted big time in that fight, and I don't see how that could not be a banger of a fight. I think that it's one of the most anticipated and one of the most asked for fights in the UFC right now. So I go out and handle business. Sean goes out and handles business. We get to do it on a championship platform. That would be just everything perfectly lining up for everything. So yeah, I hope that happens.
And obviously, it could go the other way. Marab certainly could come out of that fight and have the belt, and it could be you two next. And that's not a fight you shied away from. You've been very respectful But you've made it known you would fight Merab back when other people were not all that interested in doing so. How do you view Merab's chances against O'Malley?
I think it's going to be tough for Merab and O'Malley. You know, if Merab can get his hands on him and get him tired, he's got a really good shot. That's got to be his game plan. Um, and yeah, I think that Sean's starting with an advantage, being that all of the rounds start standing, and Sean's going to have that advantage. And Sean's very good at making it so that people don't get to touch him. So I'm excited for it. I think Merab has his hands full big time, and you know, I think that O'Malley, I think, is an underdog, but I think that he'll. I mean, he's not in my eyes. I think that he's going to likely win the fight, but you never know.
Sure, sure. And one last question I have for you is, there's always this thought process that fighters have, and it's almost like they kind of go in one way or the other, where some prefer to wait for that title fight when they feel like they've done enough, whereas others are like, no, I'll just keep fighting. A lot of things could come out of this next fight. It's a draw and they got to fight again, or something weird happens, right? And you might not necessarily, even if you win, get that next shot. So where do you sit personally when it comes to situations like that?
I don't know. I've never been in that situation, so I'll have to let you know when I find out. Hopefully, I don't find out, but I'll let you know if I do.